talking to investors here in London, talking to them about the India story and whether they are looking at allocating more capital to India, how they read the markets at this point in time. And here's Jerome Booth. He, of course, has been a big bull on emerging markets. He's the author of Emerging Markets in an Upside-Down World. He continues to believe in the strength of EMs, specifically India. Listen in to what he has to say.
Sort of permanent negative psychology against emerging markets, when actually the bigger risks are still in the United States and Europe. And we have a particularly unnerving sort of period coming up. We have the possibility of obviously change in rates in the US, and if that fails, maybe more QE, and that could be quite disruptive, particularly after a very long period of this huge expectation of a change in interest rates. And the US Fed is between a very difficult position, on the one hand, of wanting to be prepared for inflation when it comes, because at the moment they're completely behind the curve. On the other hand, not causing recession, and it may well be there's no middle ground. So if you look at emerging markets as a place to reduce risk, not just somewhere you invest in for extra risk and extra return, and you start looking at the macroeconomics and you start getting beyond the hype, you realize actually they're relatively safe when it comes to the big macroeconomic risks. And on the point of, if we're going to talk about specifically India, very clearly India's benefiting from lower oil prices. It's got a huge potential to be unleashed, but it's already growing much, much stronger than any developed world country. So I think there's a lot of good news which just isn't being priced in.
Speaking of India, and I'll talk to you about the Fed in just a moment, but we've had electoral results coming in from the Bihar elections which have gone against the government, and there is caution now on the strength of the reform process and whether this government will be able to push through the kind of reforms that it would have liked to. How are foreign investors going to read what's happening on the political scene in India?
Not good. Clearly the VAT is a big disappointment. There has been.
You mean the GST?
Yeah, the GST. And the inability to push even that after such a huge sort of effort is a major blow. And one hopes that there can be sort of reinvigorated energy. But the idea that it was good enough to have a lower house majority, we might have to revisit that. On the other hand, expectations about everything happening tomorrow, which is obviously common for investors and markets.
Well, that's Jerome Booth there.